I've worked with over 1,400 students, some of which are the brightest in the state. And you know what they all thought before they actually started improving? That they were slow. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how you can improve your speed for the John Monash entrance exam for the math component. So let's just jump right into it. So the truth about speed is that it's not necessarily about practice. It's not really a matter of if you're smart or not, but rather it's about the idea of frictionless thinking. Okay, so what is frictionless thinking? Why am I saying speed isn't about how many questions you do? Well, a lot of people think that the reason they're not quick at something is because they just haven't found the optimal path. Now, when I tutor students for the John Monash entrance exam, a lot of people think that they're slow because they're bad at maths. They just don't get maths, and maths isn't their strong suit. That's not really the issue. The issue is that the reason they think they're slow is because every single step forward they take, it feels like they're walking through mud. So they decide to do a million different practice questions. They decide to kind of doubt themselves and think that, oh, they're just not smart. But the issue is that speed isn't about how much you know and how smart you are, but rather it's about how you think. How you think. You want to make sure that every single thought that you have and every single procedure you take in maths especially is frictionless, because every single pause is equal to friction. And every single pause kills time. That means friction kills time, which is what people think speed is. So what we need to do is we need to focus on this idea of friction. Speed isn't about just how quick you do things. It's about how your brain can process the steps and actually do the steps. So I want you to imagine your brain as a gearbox. Every single decision you make is like shifting a gear in a car. And if you're shifting constantly, if you're always trying to think about how to solve a question when you see a question, you're going to be shifting gears 4 or 5 times for every single question. And if you have 60 questions, that's 250 to 300 gear shifts you have. That's a lot of gear shifts. No wonder you're slowing down. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of any unnecessary gear shifts, which means we need to get rid of the hesitation. So what exactly is hesitation? Well, hesitation is when you see a question, you stop, then you go, okay, well, I'll do this. And then when you're doing that procedure, you stop again, and then you keep doing that over and over and over again. It breaks the flow. And when you break the flow, you have no momentum, you have no speed going through. Have you ever done an exam and you're just on a hot streak where you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8 questions back to back, and they all are taking less than 20 seconds apiece? That's because you've built momentum, you've built flow. I can guarantee when you see a question and you stop at it, it's going to kill the rest of that flow and you're going to lose a bunch of time. Happens to the best of us, happened to me as well when I was preparing, because I didn't understand that the reason I was losing that speed that I built up is not because the questions were hard. It wasn't because the questions were hard. It wasn't because I wasn't smart enough. It's because I lost that momentum because I had to deal with friction. I had to overcome this friction. So speed doesn't come from just pushing harder, doing more questions. It comes from eliminating the gear shift. So every single time you want to think, oh, I need to build speed, what you actually need to do is you need to get rid of all this unnecessary thinking. You need to optimize the path you're taking. You need to get rid of your gear shifts. So how can we do that? Well, what I like to teach my students is to create something called a reflex sheet. So what is a reflex sheet? A reflex sheet is basically something that allows you to track every single mistake or unnecessary protocol that you're taking when you are trying to solve a question. So every single time you have a hesitation, just take a note of it, write down on a separate piece of paper. Oh yes, question 22. Question 35. Yes, whatever. And just write that down on a separate piece of paper. So you still do your mock exam as you're doing it timed and stuff like that. But then you write down on a separate piece of paper exactly the questions that you had hesitations in, right? And if you don't want to do it in time conditions in a mock exam, which is completely fair enough, what you can do is you can select 10 questions in a mock and then just try and go through them as quickly as possible. So 10 questions should take you ideally 5 minutes max. Obviously, I've already talked about how every single question you do should take less than 30 seconds. And by that, I mean less than 20 or 10 seconds to actually solve them, because there's going to be some questions that take more than 30 seconds to solve in the exam. So you should do 10 questions in a batch, group them up, and then try and do them as quickly as possible. And then if you notice yourself hesitating on them, ask yourself exactly what the hesitation was. So I have some examples in here. So for example, you might ask like, oh, is 121 divisible by 11? Oh, I didn't realize what the difference of two squares was. Oh, I forgot how to convert a fraction to a decimal, or whatever it is, right? So write down these hesitations on a separate sheet of paper. And when you go through these hesitations and you look at all of them, you want to drill every single one of these into your memory, into your reflex. You shouldn't have to think about what the process is. You should just know. Okay, so drill them in isolation. And this is going to be, if you've seen the 135 grid video, which you should definitely check out because it's really, really helpful. You should do the 135 grid, because now you know exactly, oh, my one core thing that I need to focus on in this study session is drilling this in. So you create 3 tasks, you create 5 tasks. And then from that, you practice, you focus, you create that reflex. And that's how you actually improve. So that's what you should be on your reflex sheet. And here are some, I guess, key things on why you need to build a reflex rather than recall. So a lot of people, when they're preparing for the exam, they always rely on like active recall, spaced repetition, recall this, recall that. Recall isn't going to be as helpful as a reflex, because imagine you're a chef and you're cooking at a Michelin star restaurant. You don't want to pause and think, where's the salt? You don't want to pause and think, oh, okay, well, these vegetables need to be cut really, really thinly. It's 2 millimeters and you need to pause and get your ruler out and do all that stuff. You don't want to think about that. You want to be able to just do it. You want to be able to get that vegetable, cut it instantly without having to think. That's a reflex. Imagine you're in a fight, you're a boxer. A boxer doesn't need to stop to think when to dodge, because if they stop to think when to dodge, what's going to happen? They're going to get smacked in the face. An operator, you're the operator. You don't need to pause to think about things. You don't need to pause to factor. You should just be able to do it instantly. That's the skill you want to build. If these professionals in their field are able to just do things reflexively, why can't you? They're people just like you. They're people just like you. So you need to build that reflex to just be able to do things. And this isn't coming from rote repetition and things like that. It's just you engrave it so deep into your marrow that you just know how to do it. Here's some mock practical reflex drills that I have for students. So just some quick things. If you're able to do these already, you're in a good position. But if you're not, please make sure you know these off the top of your head. Do you know every single perfect square up to 30? If you don't know up to 30, memorize them, please. And then on top of that, you should know your cubes up to 20. So you should know what 19 cubed is. You should know what 17 cubed is, so on and so forth. You should know what those cubes are off the top of your head. So that's one thing that you should definitely have in your drills if you don't already. Do you know what common fraction to decimal conversions are? For example, do you know what 1 divided by 9 is as a decimal? Do you know what 1 divided by 8 is as a decimal? Do you know what 1 divided by 13 is as a decimal? Okay. What I tell my students is you should ideally know all of the prime numbers up to 100, not just the common ones, all the prime numbers up to 100, and then know what the decimal conversion is for each one of those things. Because you cannot divide them all out and just know them. For example, if you have something like 1 on 15, you can just say this is 1/3 multiplied by 1/5. And then you can calculate the decimals and stuff based off of that relatively easily. Ideally, you should know what this is as well, but you can figure out the decimals relatively easily. So you should know exactly what these ones are, especially for the prime numbers. So you should definitely know what this is. And you should obviously know what the prime numbers are. Different algebra identities. For example, factoring certain expressions, completing the square, perfect square. You should know these and be able to recognize these. This is really, really simple, which is just basic speed and addition, doubling, halving, quartering, thirding to the power of 5, square rooting. Know these and be able to do these in larger scales as well. So if you are able to do these for things like square rooting and approximating decimals in square roots, please make sure you know how to do that. If you aren't, then make sure you know how to do it. Next one I have is powers of 2 up to 1024. This is really, really helpful. I would suggest that you actually are just able to do it relatively easy because it's just doubling, halving, whatever. Make sure you know the 3 to the power of things as well. Make sure you are identifying all of those things because it's really, really helpful. So these are just some basic ones that you should definitely have in your reflex drills. If you haven't, then please make sure you are able to do those. Also, I have a free newsletter. You can check it out. It's basically just stories to help keep you motivated and things like that. A lot of people have really enjoyed them and they're having a good time reading the stories and sharing it with their friends and things like that. So please check it out. It's completely free. You can unsub at any point in time. If you don't enjoy the first newsletter that you get when you open the thing, then please just unsubscribe at that point because I will not be able to write anything better than that first newsletter that you read. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. That's it. That's the video. Don't like, don't comment, don't sub. Log off and do something else now. I'll see you tomorrow, operator.